And I'm going to click on this and I'm going to do that. And here he is. Hello, sir.
Oh, hello, hello.
How are you
Nice to
doing?
yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So, I'll let you, sort of introduce yourself and we'll start there.
Yeah, so my name is Jacob. I work at Framer. I'm a senior performance engineer, and I've been in the web performance area coming close to maybe 10 years by now. Yeah, and I started doing web performance because when I was young, I always had the slowest device available on the market, basically. And whenever I opened my laptop and I opened Firefox, I guess back then, or maybe Internet Explorer, it would take minutes until websites show up. And when I got into the teenage age and then started getting kind of interested how to make websites and so on, I figured I want to have my website work fast on my Internet Explorer. So that's basically what got me into web performance, because I wanted to be able to visit my own website fast if all of the other websites are slow. And that's basically, since then I've been also thinking about, yeah, inclusivity, I call it, because
Mhm,
people today might have the same experiences I did 10 years ago.
mhm.
And even if I don't know, program on a M3 or M4 laptop, so basically the latest Apple devices, people out there might have very old smartphones or different ones. So whatever I do, I want to make sure they also have a great experience on the websites I touch. And that perfectly fits Framer, because Framer is a website builder and I work on making all of the websites our customers do faster.
Awesome, awesome. Now, I'm glad that you mentioned Framer because I actually want to sort of skip back real quickly. So, you're currently at Framer, and you just mentioned Framer's a website builder. Just tell us a little bit more about the about Framer and essentially why you joined as well.
Yeah, so Framer is a design tool, but not only a design tool, you can also get out a fully working website. And that's very different to all the other website builders out there. Usually those only have templates or similar. So you have to pick a default template and then maybe adjust your logo or something. But that's not unique, right? It, you want your brand to be very unique. And the Framer, you can have a very unique look, but not only a unique look, you can make it feel however you want your website to feel like. So there's endless creativity, and the best part is all of the animations and interactions you design are becoming a real thing once you publish. And of course, this is part of the challenge, making all of the Framer websites fast, because there's no such thing as two Framer websites looking the same. Every single Framer website looks different. So the core challenge is, how do you make all of the multiple thousands of websites fast if you don't know how it's going to look like? And that's also part of why I joined, because I think this is a great position to have an impact on the web. Yeah, that's my personal mission, to make the web faster.
No, absolutely. And again, that sort of leads into your sort of story about being into performance because if you see you have an opportunity to join a company and tackle a particular issue that they may be having or they may not have known that they were having, though I would assume they likely knew. Um, and being able to affect some of that change must be also gratifying.
Yeah, for sure. I think also Frame is led by great people who are also interested in performance. And so basically that's why they were looking for performance engineers, because they know we could get better and we want to get better every day. Because as mentioned, no Framer websites looks the same as to another. So optimizing all of those websites from a single landing page to a big brand that has 10,000 pages is a very different challenge. And ensuring that all of those pages, no matter if it's just a single page or those 1,000 pages, is something you can work on for years.
Mhm,
And that's
mhm.
obviously what I'm doing. So yeah.
And when you joined Framer, were they actually looking for performance engineers?
Yeah, so you probably know Ivan Akulov. He did talks on React, and he's a great React expert and overall on web performance. And the funny part is, I joined because of him, because he was basically hired by them and creating a new team specifically for performance. And I met Ivan probably also maybe 8 years, maybe 7 to 8 years ago, because we were working both on a GitHub open source repository from Chrome, no, was it Chrome DevTools? I can't remember anymore. Anyways, it was a repository about how to optimize Webpack bundling, and that's where we met. And ever since then, we've been in touch. We've been optimizing websites together, and yeah, that's why we started working together again on Framer, and that's how I got here.
That's awesome. And you just mentioned that, well, it sounds like Framer has a team dedicated to performance. Is that correct?
Yeah, so mostly for the actual browser performance, it's me and Ivan. But we also have other people. I think it's one of our core interview questions, if you want to apply it Framer to understand as performance, at least to some degree. So basically, we ask questions during our interviews, how you understand that performance, because we want every engineer to have at least some idea. We don't expect you to be an expert, of course, because we have dedicated web or performance engineer roles, like my position. But we expect you that you are at least aware you maybe shouldn't animate left or like right or top or something. You should maybe rather go for transform or anything. So that's what we're looking for in front-end engineers or like full stack engineers. And yeah, the team consists also of other people, because we have basically a canvas, and the canvas is turned into a real website at some point. And we want all of those things to be fast. So turning this canvas into a website as soon as or as fast as possible is also a great challenge. And that's also what other guys in the team are doing.
That's amazing. So it sounds very much like you look for people not with absolute expertise, but a good set of foundational concepts around performance. Like nothing
Yeah,
sounds too foreign to them when you bring it up.
exactly. Yeah. So basically they are aware, and if they have questions, they can always reach out to me or Ivan or maybe the other folks in the team. But it's not fully news to them that they should be careful about this, but they should be aware they might need to be careful. And if they are unsure, that they know they have to reach out or can reach out about this. So basically, knowing the basic concepts is what we're looking for.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. And, again, these are conversations that I've had very recently, actually, just around that very topic. So I was going to ask something else about Framer, but that's totally fine. We can move on. Now, you had mentioned as well that in very sort of like brief details, how, what really drove you to get into web performance. And it sounds like it started with like underpowered devices. And so if you just want to sort of like walk us through that a little bit, with a bit more detail, really.
Yeah, so I was raised just by my mom, and that meant we didn't have too much money when I was younger. So that's how I got to those, I call it slower devices. So it was maybe just the entry devices available. So one of the cheaper laptops, just so I can use the internet. I mean, 10 years ago, so I'm 28 by now. So 10 years ago I was 18, but let's go back to 14 or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was frustrating to maybe see how fast YouTube loads on other people's devices. Yeah, I wanted to make sure when I opened my own website, it was a fan website for an online game. I wanted to be sure it's fast on my own device. I wasn't aware that I was having the slowest devices, basically. That only came step by step, and I was seeing, oh wait, why does it load so fast for you? and and obviously nowadays it's kind of similar, with different countries having different internet connection speeds or mobile connections. Like if you're in a city with lots of skyscrapers, maybe your internet connection suddenly goes very slow for some reason. I am from Munich, Germany,
Mhm.
and we have something called U-Bahn. That's our public transport, basically an underground train. And there are some stations in our public transport network where the mobile internet just disappears. So when you load a website or something, the internet is gone, or it gets very, very slow. It doesn't fully disappear, it gets very, very slow. And then you start seeing how some other people, how their daily experiences in the internet. And that's also when you realize maybe you should be more careful about what you put in the internet. Like maybe you shouldn't load 2 different React versions or and jQuery on top, or maybe then also Angular or whatever. Maybe you should optimize your images. Maybe you should be considerate what kinds of JavaScript are you loading. Like don't load all of the JavaScript required for all of your websites. Only load the JavaScript that is required for the current page. That's my opinion.
So, but not only your opinion, but your experience, and I think it's very important for this to be highlighted. There are a couple things here. I think one of them is the fact that, and I'm sure you can confidently support the statement that, there is a very clear difference in, low end spec devices and what some people have because you experienced the challenges.
Oh
There's
yeah,
no, there's no denying it when you're like, hey, how come this is loading so quickly on your phone? I'm next to you and it's still, I'm not getting anything yet, right?
yeah.
And also, and this is something that I discovered some time back just through some reading and some research and some talks that I watched. But, the idea that underpowered devices or low power devices are not a G7 problem is completely false, because you could grow up as a teenager in Germany, which is a G7 country. We would agree that for the most part, you would imagine that people don't have like financial challenges to have powered devices that, mirror some of the high end phones. But the fact is that that's not correct. You
Yeah,
do have devices that are affordable, but very low end spec. And then
exactly.
you have low end spec performance.
Exactly. And I think this I always phrase it it's unfair because the internet was founded on the principles that everyone has access to basically everything, but it breaks at the point where it's getting unfair because some people take minutes to load something. And one of the blog posts that inspired me the most in regards to web performance is many years ago, probably over 10 years ago, someone at YouTube figured out, okay, I want to make the YouTube watch pages lighter. And he just did it because it was also a performance person. And so he started doing this in his as hobby project, basically. Just someone at Google figuring out, yeah, let's trim the watch page as much down as possible. At some point, he convinced his manager and peers and so on to follow this, like basically finish the project. And when they started deploying it, he wrote in a blog post, they found the watch metrics regressed and they were puzzled at first. Like, how does it happen? How does the, not the watch metrics, the page load metrics, how does it work? You basically strip out 80% of JavaScript, the website is much lighter and so on. How does the average load time get worse? And the reason was suddenly the YouTube watch page was available in Africa because people would have waited like 20 minutes before, or maybe 30 minutes or so. So they just closed the tab at some point. But at the new Light website, they could wait, I don't know, 1 to 5 minutes or something, and then they would be able to watch a YouTube video. So suddenly there was access where no access was before. And that's what I mean by unfair. If just some people with fast internet or fast devices have access to something, or maybe not even just access, but have a great experience in the web, and others don't, just because they have less money, in my opinion, that's unfair, not what the internet stands for. So, and that's why my personal mission is to change it.
I absolutely love this. You may enjoy this comment here as well. I know this story very well. It's Chris Zacharias over at Imagix, the founder of Imagix. And on the 10th anniversary of that blog post, I actually did a full stream with him, and we talked about the entire process, what happened,
Oh, that's
how we got
nice.
started. You know, he actually, I don't want to go off course, but I love this story so much. He actually he went snowboarding with his boss, and they were talking about it, snowboarding. And his boss like, "Do you want to take care of it?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then that started
Oh, nice.
the whole process. I'll send you the link to the stream. I think
Oh,
you'll
yeah.
enjoy it.
Please
Um,
do, please do.
Oh, I absolutely will. When I tell you I love this story, I love this story. And folks out there, I'll share the link in the show notes when this is all completed. But it's a fantastic story of how things got going with the landing page. I'll give you a quick little note too. Part of it was rooted in the fact that there used to be a competition on who could create the smallest game,
Ah.
and his boss knew about the competition, and the winner, I believe, came out of Germany.
Oh,
And he kept thinking about it, and that's why they brought up the whole landing page under like 100 kilobytes, because that's what they were looking for. And anyways, I could talk about this forever, but
oh yeah. Me
thank you
too.
for bringing that up. It's a great story. I'll send
Yeah.
you the link to that story. It's like an it's yeah. I let him talk about it. And it was called Project Feather, by the way.
Yes, yes.
Um,
And I
anyhow,
think everyone should like print it and I don't know, praise it.
oh yeah, yeah. And listen, he's going to be so happy to hear about this because when I told him, I'm like, dude, we got to talk about this. He's like, really? I'm like, dude, like this project has been shared and talked about so much, like you don't realize it. And I don't
Yeah.
think he did at the time. So it's really cool. That's awesome. And again, I think people do not realize at what extent the world is not about iPhones and um, you know, S series Samsung devices. You know,
Yeah.
like people who think they have great phones are using the low end Samsungs, and then others are using devices you've never heard of that have absolutely no power, but they can get on the internet. You know,
Yeah.
that's all that some companies believe matters. So, you know, we know exactly your lived experience, you know, why you are fighting for a speedier and more democratic almost web. So that brought you to Framer. But also, you know, when we were having this discussion, you're telling me that you're really looking into the idea of GTMs like tag managers and, you know, how to make that experience better. Tell us about how you got into that whole space.
Yeah. So when IMP shipped last year, so the new core web vital that measures when you click somewhere or do any interaction basically and how fast the browser can paint,
Mhm.
it was it was a nice shakeup of the industry because for the first time you could measure how smooth a website feels, not just by the loading time or by visual shifts like the content like CLS, but also like interactivity. And I think this comes down to why I like IMP so much, comes down to again this democratic idea of the internet. Because previously maybe you could say, okay, my website is now fast for most people. But again, there's a difference after the page load for different devices. Because, for example, as you mentioned, if someone uses the latest iPhone, I don't know, 16 with 17 Pro,
Yeah,
I don't know.
haven't been now. Yeah.
Yeah. So if someone uses this and then you compare it to, I don't know, some very old Samsung S10 or something, the how smooth a website feels is so much different. And that's true for, I'd say, many websites. And of course, there are multiple things that go into IMP. So it's not just tag managers, but from my experience at Framer and also in my previous job, so we were looking how to optimize IMP before IMP got released because it was my personal concern. We figured tag managers are one of the causes where engineers have very little saying because usually it's some other team, for example, the marketing team or maybe some data analysts or whatever. I'm not blaming those teams, but they are in control of the tag managers and they're not engineers. So they just put in whatever the documentation says. And usually how that looks like is they integrate TikTok Analytics, Bing Analytics, some other Microsoft product, then Google Analytics on top of Google Tag Manager. Then they load some cookie banner and then some content manager and then what else is out there? Meta, Instagram, Pinterest. So we are at 10 trackers already. And I don't even know all of them. And there are some websites that load all of them, like literally. You can see when you open them, especially if you have ad block, you can see they count how many things are blocked. And sometimes it goes up to hundreds. So they're loading hundreds of, I don't know, tracking scripts, analytics, session trackers, content managers, God knows who, whatever. And the interesting part about those is they run stuff whenever you do an interaction. And that's, why my interest fell on Google Tag Manager specifically, because I don't blame Google Tag Manager itself, because if you integrate Google Tag Manager on its own, it's basically bare bones. It doesn't do too much. It causes some IMP, but that's just very minimal overhead. But once you integrate all of those third-party tracking things that usually are integrated or like loaded via GTM, that's when GTM enables the worst of the worst. Because once you then click somewhere on a page, some random JavaScript, like literally random JavaScript will run, and you as an engineer lose control. And that's what I think we should change. And I tried approaching some Googlers in the past, and I mean, the Web Performance Lab has great Googlers, right? Barry and Rick and so on, great people. They know about this, and I think they also share the same opinion. But we just don't reach the Google Tag Manager team, or maybe it's not their highest priority. But whatever it is, I think they could do something about it, but they don't. Maybe for some other priorities, I don't know. At some point, I figured, okay, let's take matters into our own hands. And last year, we brainstormed about this with another Googler, Philip Walton, also a great engineer. He proposed something, why not override how GTM works? And that was a great idea. The only downside would be, okay, once you tell your marketing team, okay, let's override GTM, usually what the response is why and no. Those are the two options usually, because they fear they lose tracking accuracy, they lose data and so on. And that's a fair thing to say, right? It's their job to make sure they can read the data or make something out of the data. But my job is to make a website fast. So how do you balance this? And that's where I got the idea to combine two things. Again, both from Philip Walton, but I came to the conclusion, why not chain them together? Override how GTM works, basically by yielding to the main thread before running GTM, but combine it with yield unless urgent, which is a yielding method where you yield to the main thread unless a user is about to leave, which means, okay, so basically I click somewhere and then I stay on the page. So we move GTM out of the way. So my interaction is fast, and then afterwards GTM runs. But if I'm about to close the tab, then we would run GTM immediately, so the tracking event isn't lost. And this resonated great, so I published it in my blog post a year ago. I can share my screen for this.
Boom, there we go.
So yeah, I wrote about how to improve IMP a year ago, and presented some of the yield patterns. And here we go. So basically we see whenever you click somewhere, Google Tag Manager runs, that b.push is a very unique signal for GTM doing some random amount of work. And it's very hard to figure out what the random amount of work is. So you could tell your analytics team, hey, do we need all of the tags? And it's also hard for them to figure out, because sometimes people have left their tags around before they have left the company. So
wow,
again, God knows what's used and what isn't used. So yeah, the approach was kind of simple: override the data layer push and then wait a paint before running the stuff. And then by combining it with the yield unless urgent, So we have a strong guarantee the event will still run when a user leaves the website. Was, as mentioned, a great success. For example, Erwin Hoffmann recommended it last year during his Performance Now talk. I think he also recommended it to some clients. And to my knowledge, and also I've been doing this at Framer, we couldn't measure any impact on tracking accuracy. So there was no single negative impact, but we measured positive IMP impact. So improved IMP. And that was minus 50 milliseconds at P75. We didn't have too many tags, so I can only talk about the Framer results. But minus 50 milliseconds at P99 is also good. So for example, if you have, let's say, an IMP average of, or an IMP P75 rather, of 210, and you remove 50 milliseconds, you're suddenly green again. And of course, it's maybe not great because the IMP sweet spot usually is like 100 for optimizing conversion rate to a peak. But it's still good to have Core Web Vitals green because it might improve your SEO and so on.
But that's fantastic. But as you said, like, a 50 millisecond improvement, as you just mentioned, could easily be the difference between who knows what and green. And for those out there, green means acceptable or good, we'll say. And that's significant. Now, getting back to something that Tammy Everts had said, her sort of theme was like, how fast is fast? Because just because you're in the green might not necessarily mean that your users are going to have the best experience, because who knows what, like, your data is your data, you know exactly what that means. But just generally, as you just mentioned, like 50 milliseconds, and because if I'm not mistaken, the threshold's like 200 milliseconds in INP, right?
Right.
So you're looking at 25% potentially of just like improvements, and potentially a little less, but the idea of being in the green just with a few adjustments, I think, is something worth celebrating.
Right.
I quickly want to get back to something that you mentioned, and I wanted to, get your experience on this, because, you had listed off how some tag managers would it was just like an endless stream of analytics and X and Y and Z. What are some of the off memory? What are some of the worst cases that you've seen?
So you mean the total amount of
Just yeah, like generally, like, have you seen some significantly bad cases, or in general, what do you see? Like, is it generally not good?
Yes, sorry for the interruption. I think at most websites, I think most enterprise websites use GTM, and they will load at least, let's say, 5 to maybe 10 third-party integrations, because as mentioned, most tracking or like analytics teams or maybe ad teams or something are keen on we're getting visibility on TikTok, Meta. I'm not sure if there's an X tracker, maybe not. Some of the other things, and that's the bare minimum. And then I've seen, I think the maximum I've seen, but I've also heard other stories, was 30 integrations.
Wow.
And that's quite a lot. I think at the point where you're loading 30 third-party scripts, you're also prolonging your website load time for sure. So LCP maybe is impacted by this. And for sure, IMP is impacted, because script loading and script execution is also something where a user won't wait 5 minutes until they do a first tab, right? And that's also, Erwin Hoffmann recently also published some data how early people click during a page load. And the data was quite interesting, because once again, he found that for, I think, 55%, it was GTM causing the bad IMP during the don't quote me on that. It's just something I've recently seen on the Web Performance Slack. By the way, Web Performance Slack, great place. I think it was also a game changer for my person, because since I've joined, it's basically you learn something every day, and also you can contribute back. So I've been telling everyone wherever I meet people, join the Web Performance Slack. It's free, and you can talk to experts like on no other place. And also it's a nice sharing platform. Like people share their insights that they might not be confident sharing like to the social media, but they are confident sharing it to other experts.
Yeah. And it's a place where you can get very educated opinions about something that's taking place, about some data that you're sharing, some code that you're sharing, whatever it may be. So that's definitely a spot. And, I'll probably put in the link to the Slack as well in the show notes. Um, Something with regards to the integrations. Oh, I remember this is sometimes some time ago, but Tammy Everts had talked about some of these third parties coming in. She talked about third parties making additional calls, all the way through, and I believe she started to call it fourth parties. Because there was like
Yeah,
a third party making an extra call, and she's like, "Well, that's a fourth party," you know.
that's right. That's
And
a good one.
oh yeah, I remember laughing, and every time I hear anything about third parties, I'm like, oh, Tammy Evers has the fourth card, talks about fourth parties because they are making all these additional calls that you have no idea what is being loaded, where it's coming from, and that's something that in her presentation years ago, I started to really understand, like, you have no control, like you said. It's like this little, little script that loads a ton more, and you have to sit there and wait.
But there's someone who could have control, and that is the GTM team, because they could add a toggle for this. Like a year ago during the pre-conference for the Performance Now, there was someone from the Google Ad Manager or something team,
Mhm.
and the ad team at Google introduced yielding to the main thread between loading ads. And ads is a big business for Google, right? So if something goes wrong there, it would probably have been reverted at this point, but it wasn't reverted. It's stuck because it improved performance. So if the ad team can introduce yielding to the main thread, and they enabled it by default, so you can opt out if something goes wrong, but it's enabled by default. So I wonder, why can't the Google Tag Manager team introduce this? Maybe not by default, because maybe they are very keen on having 100% tracking rates or something, but they could introduce a toggle saying, before handling, I don't know, a click tag, yield to the main thread. Make sure it doesn't affect IMP, or like run it with low priority in the browser or something. That's what I'd expect from the Tag Manager team, because that would have major impact on the value. Because all the Framer websites I've been looking at that have bad IMP, GTM has a very high percentage in those. So I'm not saying only Tag Manager, like rather the third-party tags that are loaded are the cause of bad IMP, but it has a major share on the web. I'm pretty confident about this, and I'm not the only person saying this. Like last year, also again in the pre-conference, you were there as well. We talked about this as well, the GTM impact. I think many people see this, and also again, Erwin Hoffman's data shows this. They run a real user monitoring platform, so they have the data. I have the data from all the Framer websites. My wish, or maybe the dream for the future, would be that Google Tag Manager acts, but once again, they didn't, and I've seen minus 50 milliseconds at P75, but I was pretty confident that's not enough. Like, it's not enough to make interactions that fast on every device, like not only the fast devices, but also on slower devices. And that's why I took matters into own hands again and started reverse engineering GTM over the course of the last year. And I found, let me share my screen. So here, a small trick how you can see event listeners that are added in the browser. So this is something that works in Chrome DevTools. You can get the event listeners of the documents. Basically, document level event listeners mean whenever something happens on a page, this event listener will see it.
Mhm.
And see lots of different event listeners, but I already uncollapsed GTM ones. So we see click, GTM. Again, another click listener, GA, so Google Analytics. Then key up, GTM. Mouse down, GTM. Submit. So even on form submissions, GTM runs. And not only GTM, but also Google Analytics. What I found is, if there's no toggle to make it yield, we have to get creative how to make it yield. And that's maybe a spoiler for something I will release very soon. Maybe let's take a step back. So There are two different other solutions out there, and the first one is Party Town.
Mhm.
Lots of people use it or would like to use it. It's kind of complex to get started. It has, if you can run it, it yields great results because it moves the tracking work to a different thread, to a web worker. But it's very hard to set up. Like Julian Yonder yesterday had a talk about this. I think it took them many months to get it right for one customer, and not everyone might have time to run through all the obstacles to set this up. And the other product out there is Cloudflare ZRs, and basically use the tracking work to the server side in a custom JavaScript runtime. Or maybe the third product might be, to some degree, GTM server-side container, but it still means it will run stuff client-side, so I would exclude this as a solution. And now I'm introducing a third solution for this, and this is an iteration on this override I shared a year ago. Basically, the idea is to move all of the stuff GTM could trigger to a later point in time in the user session. There's one obvious disadvantage compared to ZRs or to Party Town. It will still run on the main thread at some point. We do our best basically to move it out of the user's way, because a normal user session is gonna look like, okay, I'm gonna scroll and then I'm gonna read. So there are pauses in a user session where nothing is clicked, nothing is scrolled, nothing is basically, the user doesn't interact. And that's a great chance where you have some brief moment to run some of the tracking stuff. To do this, I had to get creative because you see lots of those document level event listeners are added by GTM. So my idea was to intercept the events before they reach this event listener, and then yield to the main thread, and then continue the event. And that moves all of those events out of the critical user journey. It's kind of like magic, because obviously Google Tag Manager doesn't only have those document level listeners. So I'm gonna spoil some of my blog posts here. So GTM adds a listener to the document right when it loads. Then it adds another one. It adds the Google Analytics adds one. The Meta Tracker adds one. GTM also listens to hash change, pop state, page show. Then a Metas tracker and Google Tag Manager overrides history.pushState. So not only they listen to clicks and tabs and submissions, they also listen to navigations. So basically any user interaction that could happen is intercepted by a random amount of trackers. And that's why we basically have to do something against this. There's one thing you can't fix, and that's something I tried bringing up to the GTM team, and Rick also forwarded this to the GTM team, but we couldn't get it fixed. Basically, when you have a click trigger in GTM, it will trigger a forced reflow because of the code. So this is from the minified source of Google Tag Manager. Mm-hmm. So we can see it reads a.inner text. So basically the text of the anchor, and that can cause a pretty long style reflow. So in this case, it was 61 milliseconds, and that in the click listener, that means we could easily go over the 200 milliseconds threshold for nothing. And that's the most important point. It's for nothing, because in analytics or tracking work is invisible to the user, but it runs as if it would be the most important part of a click event, because it runs first, it runs blocking, and it takes, especially on slower devices, a really long time. And the worst part, again, is you can't control it. So you don't know if it's one thing that runs. Maybe it only takes 60 to, 100 milliseconds, or maybe it's 10 things that run, and that for nothing. So basically, the analytics work runs first, nothing is happening for the user, and only then your maybe transition starts, or the focus list, the focus states activate, or maybe then the form is submitted. And I think this, again, that time I'm saying this makes it unfair. Yep. Because for maybe my M4 laptop, MacBook, all of this might not take 100 milliseconds, it might take 10 milliseconds. So when I test my website, oh yeah, everything is fast. I get all the data, nice, job done. Yeah. And I open it on an old smartphone, that is maybe the average worldwide. So Alex Russell publishes the average device data every year.
Yeah.
And I open there, and suddenly you click somewhere to do a navigation, and it takes seconds, like 3 to maybe 10 seconds, and you wonder what is going on. And that's also the same situation that your user gets into. They wonder what is going on. And then you should ask the question, is it worth? Because at that point, users don't have time, or maybe they don't like waiting. So maybe they just close the tab. And then you could use a sale or something.
Absolutely. I love how you framed it because sometimes they are absolutely like you could end up with a useless execution, you know, and that ends up just ruining the entire, you could call it user experience, interaction, you know, whatever, and obviously performance ultimately. It makes me wonder how much of this is known by because, engineers like yourself, engineers that may be on the GTM team, but you have potentially salespeople, marketing people on GTM team who have no idea this is happening. And, maybe they've had presentations, but they've not actually seen data on the impact that's potentially taking place.
No, I think so. So by reverse engineering and GTM, I mean, it's unminified source, so I can't say I've seen all of the source or like understand all of the source. I focus on the parts that were interesting to me. But from what I can tell, I don't see any real user monitoring thing inside the client. So
Mhm.
I'm not confident they don't have data, but at least from my POV, it looks like they don't collect data. So maybe they just don't know how bad performing it is. But I could also imagine maybe they have something like an always running A/B test where 1% of the web gets like a client that measures how fast stuff is or how slow stuff is. So yeah, I guess we would need someone from Google to answer this. But yeah, my dream would be that we see someone from the GTM team at some point and then like talk to them to get some insider details. The important point I'm making is I think I don't want to blame them,
Yes.
but I'm more like disappointed because they could do something and I really don't understand why they don't. And I'm pretty sure there's a reason for this, but I'm not seeing it. So I just can, yeah, it's just my disappointment that speaks for me, and that's why I had to take matters into my own hands. And the solution I developed for Frame is also something that can work for other websites. There's a limitation that basically, for example, your React application can't run on the same document level listener because otherwise regular interactions might be delayed. But yeah, this is something that might work as an alternative to Partytone, to ZRs, and might still improve performance.
Amazing, amazing. I'm actually going to take this screen off stage if you don't mind,
Yeah.
so we can kind of finish up this conversation. So this has been quite fascinating because, again, it has me thinking a bunch of things, even to the conversation that we were having previous to us jumping on. You know, there might be a reason why they're not uh, being more active and looking at improving their interactions and whatever delays or the ruinous IMP that's taking place. But it almost sounds like they need to be on a perf now stage.
Yeah.
To
Yeah,
kind of
I mean, I would love to see someone of them. Can't express it different. I mean, also, if they don't have the data, I'm pretty sure we have people on the web performance Slack who can provide the data. We have multiple users, multiple people who run platforms. So I'm pretty sure all of them can see how Google Tag Manager is basically not the one to blame because it's the tags that are to blame, but it all falls back to GTM because IMP is attributed to GTM.
I'd have to go back and check, but I wonder if Akamai is the RUM archive. That's it.
Yeah.
I wonder if they track it. I have to double check, but that'd be something very interesting. So, with respect to the solution that you've been using at Framer, is there? I think you mentioned you're making some updates to it, or you're looking to make improvements along the way. Like, what is it? What does it look like from now, say, till the end of the year?
Yeah. So basically, I think so. I started improving it since January, and then we've been running it on our own website for 3 to 4 months to be confident it doesn't break analytics once again, because it's a much the solution I'm doing now is much more invasive than the one in the blog post I published a year ago. But it's much more invasive because there's no other way. So basically, the solution a year ago only changed how push state works. Whenever you push an event or whenever some tag pushes an event or something, but that means tags might still run if they listen to click events, like all of the click events I showed you in the browser that GTM adds. And to work around those, you would either have to check every single tag or tell your marketing team, you can use Google Tag Manager, but you can't use 90% of the features. They will look at you and maybe, I don't know, call you crazy or maybe forget tomorrow. Yeah. So there needs to be a solution from code side or from the GTM team, because a toggle would also be used, right? Because it would be a feature. And if phrased correctly, everyone would use the feature, because you could trade like hypothetically 1% of tracking accuracy for 99% faster user interactions. Like that would be a no-brainer, at least to me. Of course, if it's a toggle and you say, okay, my event is so important, I need 100% tracking accuracy, then you might sacrifice performance for this. But since that's not possible, you have to resort to some very creative hacks. And basically I only need to finish the blog post, because if I only put up the code, so I put up the code in the web performance Slack. It's open source, so anyone can copy it or like implement it on their own website. But I phrased it like voodoo magic I'm doing. So it needs an explanation of what it's doing. And I need to figure out some graphics before I publish the blog post and so on. And then, I think so before end of the year, it should certainly be out.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing. It would be fantastic, and this is not me pushing you at all, but I'm one for timing, right? It would be fantastic if you could actually have it launched by Perf Now, where like the actual big audience is there. And, if I'm streaming from there, you have carte blanche, open door to come in and make the announcement and launch it on the spot, so
yeah.
We'll even have like some confetti or something for like, the big celebration. And since it's Halloween, we could even dress up as like tag managers. I don't know. It would be kind of funny.
Yeah, for sure.
So here's a couple quick questions. From the previous blog post, the version that you have there is available. It's open source, and anyone can sort of use and test out right now.
Yes. And people have been. I've been approached also by other people who are in web dev or maybe web performance consultants who use this, who make use of this, and they've seen results already, because it improves IMP for free. I would call it for free, because there, as mentioned, if you combine it by yield and as urgent, you have a strong guarantee the tracking event won't be lost if you close the tab. And by the way, that's also a major advantage compared to Party Town, because for Party Town, it will kind of run slower because it's in a web worker. And when a user closes the tab, all of the process is gone. So all of the events that weren't processed by the web worker are gone. So the solution I'm looking at, the improved one and the one I published last year, they will run synchronously.
Excellent. Yeah. Good to know. And so that was then you're working on a new version that you hope to have that's a bit more invasive, but you hope to have ready by the end of the year. At that point, have you seen, and I feel like I'm going back to the old version, have you seen, larger orgs, maybe enterprise, dip into it and play around?
For the improved one, not yet. So we are in the process of rolling it out, because we also want to be careful about this. But we're also using it on our marketing page.
Yeah.
And I've been like pinging our marketing people, like analytics people, every here and then. Have you seen any tracking errors, or like did it regress from I toggled it on and off and then off and on again, to like double blind test if there's something? But we hadn't noticed anything. So basically We didn't even see I toggled it on and off, but we did see it in IMP. So whenever I toggle it off, IMP shoots up, especially on mobile. And when I toggle it on again, then IMP goes down immediately.
No, that sounds like phenomenal work, and I do hope that more orgs, who may have, may watch this or may have come across it, or if they haven't, when they do, they're able to potentially, hopefully, do some A/B testing. Like, I think of the big sort of like news publishers that are out there that have needs for GTM, and again, large organizations that have large teams that do a lot of large tracking, right? So I understand that part of it. Uh, that was extremely insightful, so I do want to thank you for your time. If there's some closing words that you'd like to put out there to the community you'd like to share, what would they be?
I think first of all, thank you for hosting. It was very nice that you like approached me and also have an open ear for this, or like want to put this out, because I think this is an important topic. We could make, I don't know, I think GTM has a very large market share, so we could improve the web for basically free if the GTM team did something. And that's such an important thing to say, because usually only browser makers have the power to make the web fast overnight, but the GTM team also has it, but they are not using it. Maybe one last sentence. I think the performance team, or maybe the performance area overall, like all of the teams at every company are awesome. I think that's also performance is a great area to get into, even in the AI days, because AI is not great at performance. The human brain can't be replaced to manually consider performance. Yeah, join the web performance leg. Approach me at any time. Approach you at any time. I think everyone who's in web performance is very friendly and open. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we've talked about it a few times for those who may not realize, but we've mentioned Perf Now a few times simply because that is a conference that many of us attend annually in Amsterdam. It's going to take place the last week of October this year, and it's actually going to fall on Halloween. So that
Oh
was,
yeah.
the few jokes that we had right there. People are trying to figure out what to wear, how to dress up at a performance conference for Halloween. That's going to be interesting. With that being said, don't go anywhere. Even though I'm going to take you off stage, I'm just going to close up with the community. Again, I do want to thank you for coming on. I look forward to having this episode chopped up, and I'll get some of those links from you that we can share in the show notes, so that people can really get a sense of what it is of this great work that you're doing. So that being said, I'm just going to take you off stage.